Orobashi, the Great Serpent, also known as Watatsumi Omikami, the venerable god of the Sangonomiya. The Great Serpent passed away over 2,000 years ago when it attacked the Narukami in an all-out war. But what was the reason for such an attack? Was it greed? Was it provoked? Or was it a ploy by those above who control the world? Well, in 2.2, we actually get somewhat of an answer to that in a study written by a Sumerian scholar named Shibab Purbiruni. I am so sorry if I botched that. The study was conducted 2 years before the Civil War broke out, and it details the folk beliefs of the Sangonomiya people and what they believe to be the Great Serpent's motives for attacking the Narukami. We'll go through the book and discuss the scholar's findings. The book is called A Preliminary Study of Sangonomiya Folk Belief. It reads as follows. Around 2,000 years ago, the Archon War was drawing to a close in Inazuma. It is said that during this time, the Great Serpent, Orobashi, broke the coral branches off his body and guided the people of the deep sea back to the light of day. And by his grace and pity, he gathered them together to make a living upon the barren island of coral. But in this world of fickle fortune, humans, puny as they are, often suffered on account of their bitter lives and were gloomy because of their pain and misfortune. The bright sun, the clear skies and the seas, the clam palace that glittered with rainbow light, the teachings of the clergy, none of these would assuage the wounds of hunger and disease. The Great Serpent never forgot his past as one of the defeated, or his oath to never again allow his people to be forsaken. So he asked the Shrine Maiden, "Blessed daughter of mine, why do the people of the deep sea weep? Have I not defeated the dragon heir of the depths and given you the light of day?" The wise Shrine Maiden replied, "Famine." The Great Serpent asked again, "Indeed, it is my failing that has caused you to go hungry. What then, my people, is your request?" The honest elders replied, "You made a road for us, guiding us to create a nation amidst the blue seas, with no need for robbery, oppression, or tyranny. For this we are already more than grateful. Yet, to the east of our coral island, there are lands wider and more fertile still. Permit us, great Lord, to set foot upon those islands, and there carve out a dominion for ourselves, that our children after us shall have a glorious past, a future of fullness, and a present without darkness." The Great Serpent was silent and made no reply. In one of my previous videos about Orobashi's demonic lore, Orobas, with whom it's speculated that Orobashi's name is derived from, hated sharing his master, and I speculated that Orobashi may have been the same, and that he did not want to share the worship of his people. However, this isn't really the case, as Orobashi is more benevolent than he seems, and we learn further that his attack on the Narukami, though dire, wasn't done out of malice or anger, but instead sacrifice. Let us read on. Narukami. It was that dominated the eastern islands, possessing great strength in war, and those deities that were defeated were all slain to the last, in accordance with the law of the divine realm. But in the many years that followed, the hungry and the diseased people would ask time and again, at last moving the heart of their god. Thus did the Great Serpent train them to become mighty warriors who commandeered ships and sea monsters while mastering wave and cloud, leading them in an invasion of the Electro Archon's lands amidst the whistling of whale songs. But the people of the sea knew not that Watatsumi Omikami had embarked upon a violent campaign, in which he had no hope of victory, and his purpose was not conquest, but sacrifice. It is said that there were inscriptions that the Shrine Maiden hid, upon which were written a prophecy of the certain defeat, and the future of humiliation that awaited this eastern expedition. Orobashi knew that he did not have the power to provide for his people, But he knew that should he perish under the blade of the Narukami, his people would be allowed to serve under the Electro God, and with her power, his people could be saved. However, this is but the belief of the Sangonomiya, and the author states that this is but a hypothesis of what actually could have happened. The book continues. Orobashi's true motives are not well recorded by history. This is merely a hypothesis drawn by those who discovered the inscriptions. Watatsumi Omikami long knew that he would not have a chance of survival this time, but accepted the prophecy's result calmly. If he wished to ensure the perpetuation of his people's faith, there was but one path: sacrifice. Even if Watatsumi would pass away, its people would endlessly weave their memories of joy, prosperity, bitterness, and loss into a united faith. These memories, in turn, would flourish on account of the intense emotions of a vanquished people, forced into shameful submission. Many among the Watatsumi people now no longer believe that their guiding Omikami has any chance of revival. But their pride as Watatsumi's people, the pain of watching the body of their god carved up for minerals by their overlord, the hurt of losing that god, these emotions have passed on from generation to generation, becoming the pillars of forbearance, resistance, and sacrifice that underpin the faith of Watatsumi's people. As the author has mentioned, Sangonomiya has an extreme lack of written historical material. As such, these past motives have all essentially become fictional tales, upon which future generations can inscribe any meaning they wish. Thus, these histories have become histories of accumulated consciousness, rather than histories of recorded fact. The fact that this collective consciousness has been strengthened and rendered ever more cohesive over time, such that a people who have lost their beloved god may still actively resist a nation whose faith is in a mighty elemental deity. This just goes to show that their persistence is hardly some obsolete thing. Notably, this tendency to give little thought to the facts of the past and emphasize the consciousness of the present is a glaring flaw in Watatsumi today. The flames of these hatreds and humiliations, born and nursed over hundreds and thousands of years, can be fanned by those with an agenda in leaner years, and ultimately bring catastrophe upon the nation. The author of the book even predicted the Civil War, which lends a bit to his credibility. But the next part is quite the fascinating one, for he notes of another motive of the Great Serpent, one that I did not expect, and one very foreboding. The last part of the book reads as follows. There is another version of the legend of Watatsumi Omikami's slaying. While the people of the deep yet dwelt in their depths, they kept very reliable chronicles, for there was no day or night for them. If they kept no precise records, they would even forget what time it was. But these chronicles were ordered sealed in Sangonomiya by the Great Serpent, never to be retrieved. The names of the people of Watatsumi were also not written in the Inazuman style then. The names and surnames used today by them came about by the order of the Great Serpent, who had them learn the traditions of Narukami. It is said that when Watatsumi Omikami decided to bring the people of the depths out of the waters, he did this at the instruction of the heavens themselves, for Watatsumi Omikami had once fled into the Dark Sea to avoid the Archon War, committing a grave sin in the process. Thus perhaps it was upon heaven's order that Orobashi went to his death. Though this cannot be known for sure, unfortunately, the script once used in Sangonomiya is known to few, and the books themselves have been hidden there also. Thus, I fear the truth of the matter shall never see the light of day. The scholar postulates that the death of the Great Serpent was a mandate from Celestia themselves. But not only was it the serpent's death, but also the order to surface the Sangonomiya from the Dark Sea. He mentions that these legends are a hint at the truth. And should this even be somewhat true, then does Celestia hold all the strings, and have they been puppeteering even the Archon War from the very start? Just how much do they actually control? Although this book was written from the perspective of a Sumeru scholar, remember that it was still written by MiHoYo themselves, and something tells me there is some intent behind this. But that is all from me. What do you think about Orobashi's motives? And do you think Celestia ordered Orobashi's death? Let me know in the comments down below.